Good morning, friends at University Unitarian Church. My name is Victoria Poling, and I am a candidate for ministry in the Unitarian Universalist tradition. It is my third summer here with you as a guest speaker, and I am grateful to speak a word with you once more. Let us pray together. Holy One of many names, we gather as a community in all the ways made possible by your creative spark. Through our heads and hands and hearts, we gather to form a web of love and affection, to hold one another closely as we lament a new wave of sickness, a new season of wildfires, the inequity of billionaires joyriding in space, while we witness our hungry and unhoused neighbors in every park and underpass of our beloved city of Seattle. Help us have the courage and conviction to side with love. Awaken in us every morning your spirit of life to guide us in living lives worthy of our common calling as an anti-racist church. Remind us of the steps we know in our hearts that we must take to become ancestors we would be proud of claiming. Spirit of life, fill us with the joy of giving one another of our spiritual gifts, of intelligence, of care, action, and rest. Allow us to receive this prayer as an affirmation of our community's worth and dignity. We are important to each other, to our city, to all the beings of the Salish Sea, and to all those whose lives we touch beyond our watershed. Blessed be.
Good morning, UUC members and friends. I'm Jules Mellon, and when I first entered the doors of UUC 3 years ago, my yearning for a spiritual community had overcome the trepidation I felt about entering a space where I didn't know anyone, and I am so glad I did. One of the things that most attracted me to UUC was the emphasis on social justice. And I have been so enriched by being able to work with UUC members on a broad range of social justice issues. One of my strongest values is racial justice, and I am so grateful to be part of a community of people who are deeply committed to working towards an anti-racist society. In the current racial climate in this country, UUC's Black Lives Matter vigils have been especially meaningful to me. And I'm looking forward to exploring what it means to become an anti-racist congregation. I give because I'm grateful for all that I receive, and because I want to support the staff, programs, and activities that are so meaningful to our members and in the community. Please join me as we share our offertory words. This church is a community of ourselves. Its energy and resources are our energy and resources. Its wealth is what we share. When we contribute to the life of this community, we affirm our lives within it.
Our reading today is an excerpt from the book of Exodus in the Hebrew Scriptures. I'm bringing this to you today for two reasons. One is that I have been serving this year as an interfaith ministry partner with a liberal Christian church, and I have been spiritually nourished and moved by the ways in which this congregation reads the Hebrew and Christian scriptures for a liberating perspective, and the ways in which this church has received wisdom and encouragement and challenge. And my other reason is that as UUs, we are being asked to rediscover our theology and dig into our historic sources so that we can live into our common calling more fully to become an anti-racist and anti-oppressive church. I will briefly summarize the Exodus story and then read from a translation that I have not edited for inclusivity because the unequal power dynamics are important to the historic context of this story. I do recognize the systemic harm of these dynamics, and I invite you to call on your resources of care in this moment if you anticipate that the theological language may be a trigger for you. In the book of Exodus, the God of the Israelites, named I am what I am, or I will be who I will be, chooses an unlikely leader named Moses to guide the people on a path to freedom. The Israelites are enslaved in Egypt, doing the essential work of the kingdom, laboring for a people who speak another language, who have different customs. Moses is reluctant to lead. He has a stutter, and anyway, Aaron, his brother, is the one who is a priest. God promises to spare the Israelites from a plague and other atrocities if Moses will listen and lead the people out into the desert towards a new and abundant land, which will be promised to them. It is a hot and dry and desolate journey. And so in time, the Israelites begin to lament. Stretched to their limit, they cry out to Moses and Aaron, "If only we had died by the hand of the Lord in the land of Egypt, when we sat by the flesh pots and ate our fill of bread. For you have brought us out into this wilderness to kill this whole assembly with hunger." Then the Lord said to Moses, "I am going to rain bread from heaven for you, and each day the people shall go out and gather enough for that day. And that way I will test them whether they will follow my instruction or not." Then Moses relayed the message to Aaron. "Say to the whole congregation of the Israelites, 'Draw near to the Lord, for God has heard your complaining.'" And as Aaron spoke to the whole congregation of the Israelites, they looked toward the wilderness, and the glory of the Lord appeared in the cloud. The Lord spoke to Moses and said, "I have heard the complaining of the Israelites. Say to them, 'At twilight you shall eat meat, and in the morning you shall have your fill of bread. Then you shall know that I am the Lord, your God.'" In the evening, flocks of quails came up and covered the camp, and in the morning there was a layer of dew around the camp. When the layer of dew lifted, there on the surface of the wilderness was a fine, flaky substance, as fine as frost on the ground. When the Israelites saw it, they said to one another, "What is it?" For they did not know what it was. Moses said to them, "It is the bread that the Lord has given you to eat." My friends, this week I have been lamenting again, and perhaps so have you. Hearing now from King County Health that the Delta variant is on the rise here, what some newscasters are calling the 2021 virus, I've been having a lot of feelings, ranging from dismay to denial. Here we go again. If I imagine going back to shelter in place, I can hardly bear it. It feels like captivity. The summer of 2021 was supposed to be the summer of getting to know each other again, was it not? The vaccine was supposed to lead us out of isolation and into relative freedom, satisfying our hunger for connection. So what now? In the story of the Exodus, when the Israelites call out in hunger, they are crying for more than food to fill their bellies. Their cries sound more like ours. They will eat well from a stew of wild quail, from the abundant flock sent to them. But they want their bread, their reassuring comfort food in that hot and dry wilderness. When the Israelites lament of their hunger, they are tired of wandering with no destination in sight. And so they hunger also for reassurance, something to soothe their fear. They want a sign that this difficult journey is worth their suffering and trial. Their lament is full of the contradictory cries of a people who are at the limit of their ability to cope. "We wish we had died before this," they say. And our leaders are trying to kill us all. Have any of you been feeling this way? Friends, what is it that will soothe our fears? If there is one thing that I have learned about myself in this past year, it's that I need to treasure my relationships and take care of those old and gold friendships better. They are precious and worthy of care. Looking to our political and medical leaders with varying degrees of skill, I've heard myself express similar lack of confidence in their ability. It feels like it's up to me to care for those I love. Coming out of my pandemic pod, I rejoiced in June in reconnecting with the people I've known the longest. I felt so grateful for this joy, and that on some level, my laments seems to have been heard. And I know not all of us are able to emerge with trust and faith from our isolation. And I know many of us never were isolated, working long hours as essential workers and healthcare providers with much contact. The Israelites' lamentations are heard, but not in the way they expect. The unexpected solution is as weird as it is practical. A daily measure of reassurance that there is a larger love holding them in the fierce heat of the unknown in the wilderness. And that reassurance is the manna, a visible symbol that Moses calls the bread of life. What might be our manna in this moment? Now, I know some of you, and I myself have been there, are stuck on the literal strangeness of this white, flaky substance falling from the sky every morning in the desert that is edible, that is like bread. Like the Israelites, you are probably asking, what is it? They did not know what it was. And neither do we. As Unitarian Universalists, we are gifted with the ability and the permission to take a metaphoric and historic look at biblical text. And so just as we wouldn't encounter the Bible as a whole as a literal truth, let us not take the manna as a literal truth. Let us, for a moment, use some childlike imagination to bring it into our mind's eye, to play with it for a moment. What could it be? When the manna in my mind's eye appears, it looks something like spider webs covered in the morning dew. Not all of us love spiders, but I think most of us have had the experience of going outside or looking out the window in the early morning and seeing those small droplets of water made visible by beating on a web. There's a magic and a mystery in that moment, isn't there? Even in the heat and drought of a summer like we're having, there is still a small portion of water gifted to the earth every morning. These webs capture the water of life. Are spider webs what the manna could be? Or what if we play a little with the text using our text-oriented mind? If we look into the translation of the Hebrew for clues like a scholar, hunting down the roots of the Hebrew words. It turns out that manna is a holy riddle. The phrase, "What is it?" uttered by the Israelites is the meaning, the etymology of the word manna. The substance known as the "what is it" has fallen from the sky. I just want to give us a moment to appreciate the weird humor in this. The "what is it?" If the Israelites can gather a daily portion of the what is it, can't we do likewise millennia later? The spiritual truth of the matter seems to remain. The question, what is it? Indeed, is something that cannot be saved up for the next day. It's not something that if someone gathers more questioning of what is it, that they get to keep more, or someone who has the ability to gather less keeps less. What isn't doesn't hold up in cold storage. What is it is a question we are gifted with asking every morning. What is it that will get us through the next difficulty? What is it that greets us with wonder and joy and beauty? As we move into the day, our curiosity and openness to step back and witness and ask of the world, what is it? May melt just like that ungathered manna if we don't set aside a moment to give gratitude, to practice thanking life for life itself. When Moses says to the Israelites that the manna is the bread of life, let us hear this as a metaphor. Only as Unitarian Universalists, we could call it the spirit of life. What is it? Not a substance or a food, and yet it nourishes and sustains us. The spirit of life that you have been given to eat every day. What is it if not our relationships? The ones you enjoy. You know how much you need connection in some measure every day. When I reflect on the connections I've renewed, it hasn't taken as much effort to reach out as I had thought, because the groundwork of years of fellowship was already there. A few comments on social media posts, a few emails and phone calls, taking a moment to share something small and beautiful and gentle from my day with others. Flowers, berry picking, animal pictures. The small touches are so important. And these posts and phone calls have turned into visits and even some short trips. It's a level of relationship maintenance that feels sustainable. Friends, I believe that this spirit of life is the ultimate sustainable and renewable resource we have as a people. The Spirit is an unearned gift we wake up with and receive every morning, whether or not there is a flaky substance on the ground to remind us, whether or not there is enough snowpack on the mountains to reassure us, whether or not we need to wear masks to greet each other in order to feel safe. A daily portion of that life energy is ours to do what we need to do with it. It is ours to ask for help when we need it. And what we choose to do and what we choose to ask for is affected by our attitude and approach towards that life energy. Do we approach with reverence? Are we grateful? Do we lament that we don't have more and that this is not what we expected and we want something else? Do we fight? In the moments of discomfort, when we're bored and lonely, when life is hard, painful, have you noticed how often we reach for our phones? We reach for the possibility of a small connection with others. Is it possible that this gesture is a movement of the sacred in our midst? Spirit of life, when we are agitated, when we do not know the way forward, we trust that you will stir in us a desire to reach out and connect with each other. Let this reaching for our phones be a visible sign of the life-giving intelligence, curiosity, and creativity present to us through the whole web of life. Remind us that this contact can be a source of joy, a source of spiritual nourishment for our hunger to be held and reassured when we are frightened. And when we are comforted, we pledge to turn ourselves back to our common calling, the work that we need to do in this world. I love the phrase that poet Mary Oliver uses, "What will you do with your one wild and precious life?" And increasingly, I feel that I am called to do the work of translation and restoration. This is an expression of my purpose here on this earth, to be like that spider, weaving a web back and forth between my relations over time, catching the water of life in my imagination, in that web that looks like the manna of the Spirit of life. And this way, I do the work of mending and repair as well as building anew. Friendship, fellowship, and church, forming these relations is like passing that thread back and forth through the web. It is a movement of life and love that frees us. Together, we are already beginning an exodus ourselves from a value system of white supremacy culture into an anti-racist, beloved community. We are already beginning an exodus from materialistic late-stage capitalism into a promised land of reciprocity. As shortages mount, we have been led into the wilderness, the liminal space of pandemic, to places where we will need to trust shy and hesitant leaders and form unlikely friendships. A place where we will need to trust weird yet practical signs of life. Let us do this work together to create a transformative community that reimagines itself. A web of relationships honoring the spirit of life that comes to us in a daily measure. May we keep it vulnerable and awkward, as Brené Brown encourages. May our future lie in biomimicry, learning from our more than human neighbors, as Adrienne Marie Brown invites us to do. May we use it in the way that the Christian scriptures invite us to live lives worthy of the calling to which we have been called, with all humility and gentleness, with patience, bearing with one another in love, making every effort to maintain the unity of the Spirit in the bond of peace. May it be so.